Hi, I'm Shauna, and this is Kalana Yoga. Do you ever run into issues with your wrist? Does this cause you discomfort or pain or a desire to not practice poses like downward facing dog? Well, in this video, I wanted to give you some modifications or substitutions for downward facing dog to help alleviate some of those wrist issues or just to help you build strength in your wrist as you are getting used to these postures. So anytime you have a posture where you are down on your hands, it's really important to press into your hands with your fingertips, not your wrist or the heel of your palm. So let's go ahead and get into downward facing dog, and I'll show you some different options along the way. All right, so coming down to our mat, I'm going to start in a tabletop position. My fingers are going to be as wide as I can get them comfortably, and I am going to press down with my fingertips rather than my wrists. This is a really conscious intention when you have your hands down on the mat. To get into downward facing dog from tabletop, I'm going to step back into a plank pose, so my heels are lifted and my toes are tucked, and then I'm simply just going to lift my hips. So this is downward facing dog. And while this might be considered a resting posture in some classes, this is actually pretty an intense pose. So I'm going to continue to press down into my fingertips to help release some tension from my wrists. And this will help me build strength in my hands over time. But let's say you're not quite there yet, or perhaps you've had an injury and you just don't want to put any weight on your wrists. What is an optional alternative? Well, one alternative is to come into a pose called dolphin. So dolphin pose is very similar to downward facing dog, but instead of being up on our palms, our hands, we are going to be down on our forearms. So dolphin pose, I am down on my forearms, my elbows and forearms are on the mat. Now you might notice I'm not getting quite as much height in my hips, and that's okay. This is a different pose, it has different intentions. So this is one optional alternative to downward facing dog. And if this is a little too much for the upper back or the arms, you can even lower all the way down into your forearm plank. Now, this is also going to give you completely different movements and feelings than those other two poses, but it can be a great alternative when you're in class and you're being cued into downward facing dog, but you don't feel comfortable to go into that pose. Another option, like you see I'm doing right now, is to come down to your knees. Feel free to bring your knees down to the mat during any yoga class. So if the hands are okay and you just don't want to put quite as much weight on them, you can do tabletop right from the hands and maybe even enjoy a cow pose or a cat pose to give you different sensations in the back, like you might feel in downward facing dog. So second option, tabletop with a cat back or a cow back. One of the beautiful things about practicing yoga from home is that you have the opportunity to use different props that might not be available to you in a studio. So let me show you now how we can actually utilize a chair to get some of the same feelings and sensations that we get in downward facing dog through our back and legs without putting the pressure on our hands. So if you have a folding chair nearby or any chair without wheels, we don't want to have our weight on anything with wheels because that obviously can move and it might cause us to potentially injure ourselves. But if you have a folding chair or any chair that does not have wheels, feel free to try it with these variations instead. So one option is to use the back of the chair. So if I was going to use the back of the chair for my hands and still try to get into a downward facing dog, I'm going to take my hands, place them on the back of the chair, step back as far as I can, and release my spine flat toward the mat and look down. Now this is going to give me a great stretch along the back, the upper back, and the back of the legs. It's going to imitate downward facing dog in a lot of those stretches. But what if I want to try something different? Or what if I don't want to have to use my hands at all? Well, then we can also use the seat of the chair as an option. So from this angle, I can still have my hands down to get a different sensation. It's going to be a little bit more like downward facing dog because my shoulders can get lower than my hips, or I can even come to my forearms as an option and use the chair to achieve a dolphin variation with the chair. So again, I'm still getting a lot of benefit of the stretch through the back and the back of the legs, but I am not pressing any weight on my hands. And this is much easier for me on the chair than coming all the way down to the ground. This makes dolphin a little bit more accessible as well. Well, there you have it. Those are some different ways that you can either modify or completely substitute downward facing dog, especially to accommodate wrist issues. Thank you so much for joining me. Please like and subscribe for more videos just like this one. Have a great day.